Hey, John Reed, JohnnyRP.com. I got a couple of dashboard gurus. I can't say who's number one and number two. I'll just say they're co-number ones.
We need a guru face-off.
Right.
I got Ryan Goodman. I got Mico. Yep. And we're talking Atlanta ASUG meeting. We are at the end of the day. You guys have been on your feet doing all kinds of gigs, but now we're going to do the recap, the wrap. So, instant reactions. What do you got?
So I'll go first. This was my first Atlanta ASUG meeting, and so we came in from San Diego as the sponsor, the platinum sponsor, and we were really I am beyond impressed with how today went. Obviously I didn't get to sit in on too many presentations. I was busy presenting most of the day, but the reactions, the conversations, just the facility, what Newell Rubbermaid here has been unbelievable.
Yeah, I would have to second that. I actually have been to a few of these meetings, and it never surprises me how well these things are executed. The energy, the attendance is here consistently, and
Something
it's
like
very
400
clear.
people.
450 to be exact.
Okay.
And it's just incredible. And being on the ASOG leadership team for Atlanta, I know what goes into these meetings, and it's just well executed. People are excited. Like I told Ryan when I told him about the platinum sponsorship, I said, what I love about here is the energy, because the local people are so accustomed to a certain caliber of meeting. They come here with energy, open-minded. I'm ready to go. I want to attend. So very good meeting.
Yeah, and also a lot of, I think, really candid conversations with customers. And there were a number of different tracks, but I'd like to focus on BI because there was a business objects track. And also, I thought one of the highlights of the day was the lunch that you guys hosted, where basically it was a really open-ended discussion with customers around their BI issues. Let's start with some of the challenges, because there definitely were some big ones. What were some of the challenges that were coming up during that discussion?
Well, so the conversation in general was interesting because you had so many different disciplines and so many different backgrounds in one place. You had business users, you had people who didn't even have business objects yet, just wanting to learn and hear, which in this case, the fact that you had so many experienced BI developers who have had pains and challenges, they really got a real look at some of the things that go on from legacy customers and some of the new challenges with the latest version of the software.
One of the largest BW customers in the world was there, a Desky Business Objects customer, which is old school business objects, so quite a range. What were some of the issues? Were there any common themes in what people were dealing with?
I have to be honest, I was a little bit shocked that we got stuck on the flash mobility discussion for so long. I mean, you had to be one user in denial. That even though we said a number of times that flash on mobile is dead, still came back 15 minutes later and said, are you sure it's dead?
Yeah.
So we were a little bit shocked. I mean,
maybe Adobe will figure this out somehow.
Yeah, are you sure Apple and Adobe are dead? And Ryan plainly said it's not going to happen, whether or not Steve Jobs picks up from the grave tomorrow. So that was one of the things that we heard, for a little while, was mobility, in particular in regards to business objects. We also heard, my Desky. I use Desky because that's what I know. And it's funny because I haven't heard that in a while, but I tend to forget that, like Crystal, there's these native legacy Desky users who are going through some pain, and when you hear someone say, I'm only using this because that's what I know, you think to yourself, but you've been knowing this for a year.
Right. And interestingly enough, not a whole lot of awareness around SAP's plans for Desky or lack thereof in this case. So
very evident.
It reminds you why these events are so beneficial, because we might think, we know that SAP's got a plan for Desky, but this person today wasn't totally clear on that, and I think they're a little more clear now.
And even more so, she didn't just find out what SAP is doing with Desky. Some of the experts in the room actually provided recommendations of how she should plan and look at, migrating over to web intelligence.
That was wonderful.
So I think that nugget of knowledge that she leaves with in her head, hopefully, will make it worth her while to come back again, right?
Yes.
It's those little nuggets of knowledge that you get at these things that I think makes them truly valuable.
What was valuable too is the fact that the customers toward the middle started sharing their experiences. And I mean, there's nothing more valuable, whether or not you talk in a session like this or not, to hear someone talking about what they're going through. You know,
Well-
that's invaluable.
Well, I thought a really good example was about halfway through the lunch, one of the bigger customers in the discussion explained some of the challenges they were still having with BI 4.0.
Yes.
And in this case, didn't have to do with universes and the business objects tools. It had to do with BEX and BW integration
Correct.
and technically BICS, which is the integration component between the two.
Correct.
And basically just sharing real world challenges that they're having around that. And you just can't replace that type of honest talk from a customer saying, here's what's working well, here's where our challenges are, and you know, everyone in the room is like, okay, noted, you know.
Well, and
So-
also, you know, typically to get customers to talk about this type of stuff, you got to get NDAs and LMPs and MOBs and security numbers, but you get them, you know, over a lunch period, which is what the point is. And people kind of, you know, I'll tell you what's going on. I may not be able to tell you my exact data, etc., but they're willing to talk. You know, as you know,
Right.
SAP knows getting customers to talk is not very easy, you know.
Let's talk a little bit about the Flash thing. I don't want to get too bogged down in it, but one thing I was really struck by is just how much BI and mobility are impacting each other, that the Flash thing has become such a serious issue.
Yeah.
Because Flash is not a problem on the desktop. Like Adobe's roadmap going forward with Flash on the desktop is supported, and in fact they're expanding some of the media capabilities. So this really comes down to executives really carrying around iPads
It does.
and you know, not just executives but line managers and, you know, people who are going to carry these devices and saying, I want dashboards on these devices. And this is what's bringing this issue to a head, right, is this trend.
Absolutely. It's like what I said in the meeting. You know, at the end of the day, the customers, the end users using these tools, they don't care what technology it is.
Right.
It could be Flash, it could be Java, it could be ActiveX, right? It could be anything, as long as it works and it does its intended task very well. And in our case, Flash has done a very good job of providing a client browser-based visualization platform, right? And it's done that very well. So I think that's the struggle, right? That and the fact that so many customers have invested significant money to produce and create and go through the pain of learning how to use this technology, because it is a unique development paradigm that everyone's invested in, and that's the challenge right there, is that now customers want mobility, and Flash is not compliant on the mobile device. And as you said, it's brought this issue of mobile dashboards to a head, right? The fact that Flash just won't work on device no matter how we push it. And then I did note during the meeting that there is a stopgap, or there is a solution. So it's not like it's not possible. You know, it just requires third-party solutions.
Right,
So,
there's
and that's-
several options people can look at, right? Whether it's trying some webby stuff, or we talked about Explorer views. There's some emulation Flash scenarios. So there's a bunch
Yes.
of
Yeah, our friends at Intivia have their
Exova.
Intivia and Exova certainly have solutions. So
It almost feels to me like customers in SAP are in the same boat on this issue, which is that SAP is not going to be able to come around and solve these problems tomorrow, because
Right.
things like HTML5 are still a moving target to some
Mhm.
degree. So customers, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys talk to a lot of customers. It seems to me that customers who are interested in the BI mobile and tablet space are going to need to think about short-term and
Long-term.
maybe long-term.
That's
And
correct.
long-term might have to wait for a little while, right, until there's more
Correct.
clarity. But
Correct.
they're going to need some short-term solutions, which they may be able to adapt based on their needs. Like, for example, if their users are comfortable with more open queries, then Explorer might actually work well. It's just that there's a downside to that if you really want someone to be able to quickly look at a predefined report and not have to think, right? So it's going to depend on use cases, I would think, right?
Or you need security.
absolutely. And another thing that I brought up earlier that people were nodding their heads is that the concept that a year ago Flash was all in on Flash Mobile,
Yep.
or Adobe was all in on Flash Mobile, and a little over 2 years ago the iPad didn't exist. So these consumer technologies are moving very quickly, and frankly they're out of the realm, out of control for SAP or any enterprise company that has now decided to adopt and move forward with these technologies as part of their strategy. So it's the grounds are still moving a little bit, and it's there's no overnight solution. So
No, I don't envy any of these software companies that have to keep up with the mobile Joneses. That's what I call it. I don't envy any of them because it is moving at the speed of lightning. I mean, before you can develop an app for, look at touchpad. Everybody was getting excited for the touchpad, and I won't go into that. We all know the story. Bloop! Whatever you built, garbage, So I don't envy anybody who has to come in and jump into this mobility. It is a fast-moving world, and I think a lot of companies are not prepared to invest the money they need development-wise to keep up with it. That's really where companies are falling short, big and small. Before they can finish the iPad, it's updated. Then there's a competitor that's taking over market share. Then you have the BlackBerry that may work, touchpad that came and didn't, it's one of these things. And then people are saying, well, I really just use my phone. So now I need my fingers to click. There's all these challenges that are constantly going on. So I don't envy any of these companies. You get a little bit frustrated. You're saying it's 2 years, this is a Twitter. What was Twitter 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Talk about that. Twitter has become, 500 million user last month. What was Twitter 2 years ago? Let's be honest.
Me and some friends.
You and some friends, right? Now, if you don't have a Twitter account, God help me, you may not exist, and that's what's happening. These companies have to adapt to all these changes. So,
Right.
to SAP's credit, it is a bit of a challenge even for a big company, especially
Right.
one as as kind of primary as they are with that mentality of ERP, transaction. This is a new world.
So for our final section, I know you have to leave soon.
Sure.
You have some, I think, friends, family expecting some attendance shortly. I want to talk a little bit about what the more exciting things that are on the horizon. Why don't we start with now? Both you guys work with customers. You don't have to name names necessarily, but why don't you each give an example of something interesting that a customer of yours is doing in this space right now with today's technology, not tomorrow's, but what they can do today.
yeah, I actually showed one of them on stage today during my keynote. One of our customers who works in logistics is working on information mashups, right? So this concept of taking data from behind their firewall, from their BI data, from their BI system, and mashing that up with external data. In this case,
The parking tickets example,
the
right?
parking tickets example, exactly.
They're literally spending millions of dollars on parking tickets.
Correct. Yeah, so
Right.
customers spending millions of dollars on parking tickets. So they wanted to understand not only where those parking tickets are getting served, but also what alternatives there are. So they take data from a public website or a public data source, I should say, and mash that up together, and they could actually visualize their tickets and alternative places that they can park down to the street level, where they can actually see the color of the curb and the street signs.
Nice.
And so that those kind of location-based mashups is something that a lot of our customers are working on, and it's skewed obviously because we specialize in location intelligence, but there's some very interesting use cases that we're seeing, and as you said, they're using existing business objects, existing Excelsius universes, and they're building incredible things.
Well, you happen to have a very interesting realm.
Hey,
feel like,
anything that works
why did
for-
I go after?
Anything that works for a customer is interesting.
So I think, just to be honest, a lot of what we're seeing, I don't know if you consider this to be exciting, is customers that are either on BI4 or that are trying to get there. I'll be very honest. And I don't know if that's exciting because sometimes you uncover the good, the bad, and the ugly when you're trying to figure out. We're doing a ton of assessments literally to tell customers, you should make the jump now or you should wait.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't know, right now I think because of all the transitions, BI4 is the first platform SAP has put forward for business objects. You just have a lot of customers that are in this state of, do I jump or not?
I assume
I don't know
that
if
is FP3 a big question? Like, should I
Yes.
wait until
Right.
FP3 and go into ramp up with that, or wait until
Wait,
further?
yeah, and
Yeah.
there's not, to me, I guess I'm not seeing as much innovation because there's a lot of,
They want to get on a platform
Open,
first before
that's
they can
right.
figure out the rest.
should I sit
Yeah.
on this new SAP platform? Do I move forward? Do I continue to invest?
Mm-hmm.
The most interesting thing we are seeing though is there is interest in HANA. SAP has done a really good job
Oh, yeah.
of putting HANA out there, and you have a lot of customers who, even though BI is in the middle of their head, they are going, this HANA thing, what can
Right.
this do for me? And that's
Yeah.
exciting, I guess, but in terms of BI, I think right now it's, do I jump or not? It's the wedding
Yeah.
bells.
Okay, that's fair. That's totally fair. So, where do you think this is all going? Like a couple years from now, I mean, you're looking at some of the cutting edge of these location services and stuff. is there something on the horizon? We talked a little bit about Event Insight and some of the potential there of like real-time anticipation of events, ping from database alerts, that kind of stuff really interests me. Is there something on the horizon that we should be looking out for?
I think real time is very intriguing, right? So looking at operational analytics and just analytics.
Hello, Hana. Yeah. The Hana pitch. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, but yeah, and we're seeing legitimate use cases for operational analytics, right?
Right.
So the idea of processing demographic data with business data to predict what's going to happen, right? Or even not even necessarily predicting, but looking back at what happened, you can potentially understand better why things occur.
Right.
Right. And
History.
I think that, from my perspective, I think the analytics space is going to really heat up. Innovations like HANA certainly help, but I see a lot of, maybe not even necessarily from SAP, but I've been working and looking at some other organizations who specialize in analytics, and there's some very powerful and intriguing capabilities that I have to assume that the SAP and business objects customers are going to want to have.
Yeah, I think predictive analytics is the key word. There's analytics and then there's the predictive nature. We've definitely seen a lot of excitement around the predictive analytics, just to kind of narrow it down.
Yeah, and that was what was, I think, interesting about your parking ticket example is that, okay, maybe a first stage is to meet with the person who's getting the tickets and saying, here's some ideas for how you could avoid it, but the real-time piece is they're driving.
Right.
And they have a dashboard right there, and it's alerting them to, here's places where you can park, here's places where you shouldn't, and that's where it starts to get really interesting, I think.
And that's not going to come out of your BI system, right? So
Right.
In order to tell me
Yes.
where I need to park, you need to crunch and process data with algorithms.
Right.
And the traditional BI stack is really good at just displaying data out of your system, maybe performing some lightweight calculations, but you really need
Right.
an analytic, you really need an engine to do
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And that's where I see things going.
So basically what you're saying is that this whole notion of real-time and operational data is not just something that SAP HANA marketing people made up to sound cool. It's actually something that could really have an impact.
Could be a coincidence, but yeah, no.
What a funny coincidence, right?
Yeah, no, but there is real business value, and that's really what myself and my team has been focused on is, and why these events are so great, because I can talk to customers, I can really talk about what they're doing or what their business users are doing, and try to find common threads where we can actually use the technology the way it's marketed.
So here's the one thing. Which one of you can build a better dashboard? This is what I gotta know.
So I learned a lot from Ryan. So I have to say I think Ryan's number one because
Is
I look
Ryan
up to
number
him.
one?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I learned a lot from Ryan. When I came in, Ryan was in there before me, him and Kallian, and when I came in, he knows I reached out to him. And I've learned a lot from him. So I want to say I'm the student. I'm not a student anymore, but I'm definitely the
Actually,
second
one
tier.
really funny thing though was it came up in a session where someone referred to you as number one, and then he quickly looked around the room to be like, "Uh-oh, where's Mico? Is she here?"
Like,
No,
So
he
glad,
is.
I'm glad we could settle this graciously.
Yeah.
And then they said, don't tweet that.
Right, and now it's on video instead. But the person at least is anonymous, so it won't,
It won't get out
to them.
there.
Anyway, so that's a wrap from ASUG Atlanta chapter meeting
Thank you
day.
for having us.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it.